Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the Smackdown and AEW Rampage review. Smackdown tonight was from the Mohegan Sun Arena in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, while Rampage was taped from the UBS Arena in Elmont in Long Island here in New York. And Smackdown tonight, what do you expect from Smackdown? Smackdown is the worst pro wrestling show on television. And the show sucked tonight. The show was absolutely awful. But what do we get on SmackDown tonight? We had Riddle versus Sami Zayn. Ronda Rousey defended the SmackDown Women's Championship against Raquel Rodriguez, to which Ronda issued an open challenge, and she was on the mic and she said, I'm going to be a fighting champion. And so Raquel Rodriguez ended up coming out, and issuing the challenge. And then we had the Women's Tag Team Championship on the line, where Sasha Banks and Naomi end up defending the titles against Shayna Baszler and Natalya. We got Butch versus Kofi Kingston. So already almost 3 months, we are nothing but seeing New Day and Sheamus, Ridge Holland, and Butch all in this feud. Almost 3 months already, this has been happening. But overall, SmackDown, awful show tonight. Absolutely terrible. Also, we had RK Bro, Riddle, and Orton. They end up coming to SmackDown tonight to call out the Bloodline, the Usos, and have this unification match to unify the tag team titles. And WWE has been teasing us with this unification match to unify the tag team titles. And we were supposed to get this at WrestleMania Backlash. And then WWE was like, no, we're going to cancel that. And they gave us a random 6-man tag as the main event of WrestleMania Backlash, which that 6-man tag could have been done on a random edition of Raw or SmackDown. And then WWE saw an article saying, they didn't even have plans to unify the tag team titles. Yeah, you did. When Paul Heyman ended up telling the Usos to go to Monday Night Raw and call out RK Bro and unify the tag team titles, we all remember that. So don't let WWE bullshit all of you. Paul Heyman ended up saying to the Usos, go to Raw and call out RK Bro and have them unify the tag team titles. That happened. But let's jump right into the review. SmackDown opened up tonight with RK Bro, Orton, and Riddle. So they end up coming out. Orton got on the mic. He welcomed everyone to SmackDown. Orton ended up saying that he and Riddle are very excited to be here, but they're also sick and tired of the chase. Orton ended up saying that it's very obvious that the SmackDown Tag Team Champions, the Usos, don't have the balls to make decisions for themselves. And it's obvious that the undisputed WWE Universal Champion, the Tribal Chief, Roman Reigns, is the only one making decisions for the Bloodline. So Riddle ended up mentioning how they had the 6-man tag at WrestleMania Backlash 1 until Reigns ended up hitting Riddle with the spear. So Riddle apologized for the loss. He kept saying that it's obvious that whenever the Usos can't handle business, Reigns comes in and gets the job done for them. So Orton ended up getting to the crowd to agree that they are also sick of this. So he ended up saying that he and Riddle demand the chance to become the undisputed tag team champions. So Orton ended up telling Reigns to bring his happy ass out to the ring. So Reigns didn't come out. Orton ended up getting Sami Zayn. So Sami Zayn came out. Sami was wearing a Bloodline t-shirt. And Sami ended up asking RK Bro if they know how things work here on SmackDown. And if they actually think they can snap a finger and summon Reigns at any time. Sami wanted to say that as a locker room leader, he's happy to address this on Reigns' behalf. He kept saying that he speaks for the bloodline, the locker room, and the entire WWE universe, where he says no one wants to see this unification match unfold. And with Sami Zayn saying that, you could tell that that was put in there by Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard. You could tell both Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard don't want this unification match for the tag team titles to happen. And if the unification match for the tag team titles happen, it would be a good thing. We will only have one set of tag team titles. The tag team division will be merged. And we won't be seeing RK Bro versus the Street Profits for the 1,000th time. We won't be seeing RK Bro versus the Alpha Academy. We won't be seeing Alpha Academy versus the Street Profits. Or RK Bro versus the Usos again. We won't be seeing any of those anymore. We need one set of tag team titles. We need the tag team division to be merged. Because the tag team division on both Raw and SmackDown fucking suck. It's absolutely terrible. So, we had Sami Zayn end up saying, more importantly, RK Bro doesn't want the match. Because if it happens, they will lose. So Sami Zayn ended up saying that he's trying to handle this like a leader, with diplomacy. He ended up saying that Owen and Riddle have something nice going on. So Sami got interrupted by the crowd because they were chanting Sami sucks to him. So Sami Zayn ended up suggesting Orton and Riddle to take the titles and go back to Raw. And don't ever come back to SmackDown. Orton ended up saying that he called Reigns out. And he ended up asking if Sami is Reigns' errand boy. Riddle ended up saying that he's going to call Sami Rusty. Because his hair looks like rust. Which was funny. But Orton ended up poking fun at Sami Zayn. And a whole Rusty chant from the crowd broke out. Sami ended up saying that this is not his name. It is Sami Zayn, the locker room leader. Sami then went on to say that he's not making a threat, but RK Bro should watch how they talk about the bloodline, because the last person who did, Shinsuke Nakamura, was taken out last week. So Orton ended up saying that it looks like Sami is actually calling shots for the bloodline and getting things done. Orton kept talking about Sami. He kept saying that he has the perfect idea. How about we do Sami versus Riddle? And if Riddle wins the match, RK Bro gets the unification match. So fans ended up cheering for that. We had the Rusty chants continue from the crowd. Sami Zayn ended up agreeing to the match. Sami rolled out to the floor. He kept saying, however, there's no way the match is happening tonight. He kept saying maybe in a week or two, so he can get the okay with Paul Heyman or Reigns, because SmackDown is complicated. It's complicated watching the show every single week because it fucking sucks. So Adam Pearce came out. He kept saying that he can't agree to Sami Zayn competing on behalf of the bloodline. But we all like to see Sami versus Riddle. So Adam Pearce ended up saying that the match will begin next. So pretty much that was basically how the segment ended. And, that was that. But overall, WWE still teasing us with this unification match to unify the tag team titles. But they're still teasing us with this unification match. And then we had Sami Zayn versus Riddle, which this was a decent match. This was an enjoyable match between the both of them. The match started with Riddle ended up charging at Sami Zayn. He backed Sami Zayn to the corner. Michael Cole in commentary ended up saying that the match can have no impact on the potential unification match. So Sami and Riddle end up tangling at each other. Riddle end up going for a triangle, but Sami Zayn end up fighting it off. Sami end up going out to the floor to take a breather. He had some words with Orton, to which that allowed Riddle to drop kick Sami through the ropes. Sami Zayn ended up coming back in. He ended up mounting Riddle with some left and rights. Sami ended up choking Riddle on the middle rope. So the crowd was chanting Sami sucks as they booed him. Sami then ended up grounding Riddle, started clubbing him with some forearms. He then applied a headlock to Riddle. Riddle fought up. He ended up kicking Sami away, and Riddle delivered a kick to Sami's face, and that brought Sami down. Riddle kicked up for a pop from the crowd, and then Riddle ended up nailing a running forearm in the corner to Sami. Riddle then ended up going for the Broton, to which Sami ended up getting his knees up. Riddle then dodged the haluva kick from Sami in the corner. He ended up going up to the top. Sami ended up rushing right back into the corner and shoved Riddle from the top turnbuckle, to which Riddle went out to the floor. So Riddle ended up landing hard on the floor. So as SmackDown came back from the commercial, Sami Zayn was dominating through the match. So Sami ended up standing over Riddle, started pounding on him. Sami ended up going up to the top. Riddle leapt up. He grabbed Sami. Sami ended up blocking a apparent super RKO from the top. Sami then ended up headbutting Riddle down to the mat. Sami ended up flying off the top. Riddle ended up meeting Sami in midair. He delivered a knee to the face to Sami. So Riddle ended up going for the cover, and Sami ended up kicking out. So we had Riddle later on. He ended up doing a big springboard moonsault from the apron to the floor, and Orton ended up loving that. We had Sami Zayn. He ended up trying to go for the draping DDT to rub it in Orton's face. Riddle ended up doing the draping DDT to Sami Zayn as Orton ended up watching from ringside. Riddle countered, ended up sending Sami over the top rope out to the floor. Riddle then delivered a punt kick to the face from the apron, and that's when Riddle ended up landing that springboard moonsault to Sami Zayn. Riddle ended up bringing Sami back into the ring. He ended up hitting Sami with the power slam. Riddle then ended up getting the second rope draping DDT, and Orton was fired up at ringside. So Riddle was getting the crowd hyped up. He dropped down to the mat just like Orton to prepare for the RKO. Sami got up and he rolled out to the floor. Riddle ended up following Sami, but Sami ended up shoving him face first to the ring post. Then Sami ended up sending Riddle into the timekeeper's area. Sami then ended up rushing back to the ring as the referee was counting. Riddle ended up making it back into the ring right before the ref counted 10. And Sami was not happy about that. So Sami was arguing with the referee, who was, of course, Jessica Carr. So Riddle countered Sami, ended up hitting the Bro Derek on Sami. He ended up going for the cover. And there you go. Riddle ended up winning the match. Post-match, Orton got into the ring to celebrate with Riddle. And the camera ended up cutting backstage to the Bloodline there. So Roman Reigns asked Paul Heyman why RK Bro are on his show and that they must be desperate. So the Usos were there. The Usos ended up bringing up the win at WrestleMania Backlash, and they're upset over RK Bro being on their show and talking smack about them. The Usos end up saying that they're doing this for the whole family, for the Bloodline. And tonight, they do it for the tribal chief, Roman Reigns. Reigns ended up mentioning about giving RK Bro their answer. So, that was that. Overall, it was an enjoyable match between Riddle and Sami Zayn. Decent match. And now we saw Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn was walking backstage, and Shinsuke Nakamura walked up to Sami Zayn. He had telling Sami Zayn that Roman might be the head of the table, but he is the table's ass, which he was talking about Sami Zayn. So then Nakamura ended up laughing, and he walked off, and that was that. And then we have Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey came out. She's a SmackDown Women's Champion, where she ended up winning the title at WrestleMania Backlash by defeating Charlotte in an I Quit match. So we saw highlights from WrestleMania Backlash where Ronda Rousey made Charlotte quit the match to win the SmackDown Women's Championship. And then after that, Ronda was on the mic. Ronda ended up saying that Charlotte being a 13-time champion is impressive, but she's got the title now. Ronda ended up raising the SmackDown Women's Championship. She got a pop from the crowd. Ronda ended up giving it up for Charlotte as being one of the toughest competitors she's ever fought. Ronda ended up saying that she had to break Charlotte's arm to get her to quit, and herself would rather die than say those words. But that's just her. Ronda ended up saying that she wants to be a fighting champion. So Ronda ended up issuing an open challenge. Ronda ended up looking to the back. She ended up asking anyone in the back who wants to make history. So out came Raquel Rodriguez. Raquel Rodriguez came out, of course, smiling as she made her way out. Even Ronda came out smiling. She made the fans touch the SmackDown Women's Championship. You know, the fans who were sitting front row, so they were all touching the title. So Raquel Rodriguez ended up marching to the ring, and both Ronda and Raquel ended up facing off in the middle of the ring. Raquel introduced herself to Ronda. She ended up speaking in Spanish first. Raquel ended up saying that she may be new to SmackDown, but what better way to be known than as champion? And it would be an honor to be in the ring with a legend like Ronda. She ended up saying tonight she will be the one to make history. So that was what Raquel had to say. And then as SmackDown came back from the commercial, we had Raquel Rodriguez versus Ronda Rousey for the SmackDown Women's Championship, which the match was okay, in my opinion. A bit sloppy. I mean, they actually gave Raquel a decent amount of offense against Ronda here. So the match started off with Raquel end up slamming Ronda to start off the match. And then as Raquel slammed Ronda, she's smiling. So then Raquel ended up picking Ronda high in the air, launched her back into the turnbuckles. So Ronda ended up attacking Raquel with some strikes. Raquel ended up dropping Ronda with another big slam. She ended up going for the cover, to which Ronda kicked out at 2. So Raquel ended up taking Ronda into the corner, started delivering some kicks to her, and then a fallaway slam delivered to Ronda. Ronda ended up getting back up, and Raquel ended up delivering a second fallaway slam, and she ended up going for the cover, to which Ronda kicked out at 2. Raquel delivered a inverted torture rack on Ronda. Ronda ended up sliding out, starting low with some strikes, and Raquel ended up cutting her off with a punch. Raquel charged it to the corner, ended up missing as Ronda ended up moving out of the way. Ronda ended up going for the armbar, but Raquel ended up resisting, and she ended up dropping Ronda with a side slam. Raquel ended up going to the second rope for the Twist Invader bomb, but Ronda ended up moving, and Raquel landed hard on the canvas. Ronda Rousey started working Raquel over with some strikes, and Ronda ended up trying to take Raquel out with the guillotine, to which Raquel powered up with a vertical suplex to Ronda. So Raquel ended up going for the cover, to which Ronda kicked out. So later on, Raquel ended up blocking a takedown from Ronda. Ronda charged with a knee to Raquel's face and a kick to stun her. Ronda then scooped Raquel for the Piper's Pit, but Raquel ended up countering that. She ended up driving Ronda into the mat, and she ended up going for the cover, to which Ronda kicked out at 2. So at the end of the match, Ronda ended up blocking a Chingona bomb attempt by Raquel, and she ended up locking in the ankle lock on Raquel in the middle of the ring. Raquel ended up getting free and leveled Ronda with a big boot, and she ended up going for the cover, to which Ronda ended up kicking out at 2. Raquel tried to go for another Chingona bomb attempt, but Ronda ended up taking her down, and Ronda rolled up Raquel, and there you go. Ronda Rousey ended up winning the match, retaining the SmackDown Women's Championship. Post-match, Ronda ended up approaching Raquel for a handshake, and both Ronda and Raquel ended up shaking hands, showing a sign of respect, and that was that. But overall, okay match. It was sloppy at points, but WWE actually gave Raquel a decent amount of offense on Ronda, which was pretty cool. And then we saw Shotzi. Shotzi was backstage with Adam Pearce. She was ranting to Adam Pearce about how she was going to the ring to answer Ronda's open challenge, and Raquel ended up stealing that opportunity. Shotzi ended up asking what Adam Pearce is going to do about this. So Aaliyah ended up approaching. Aaliyah ended up accusing Shotzi of locking her in a room so she couldn't answer Ronda's challenge. So they were arguing about a title shot as Adam Pearce ended up listening. I mean, do both these women deserve a title shot? What has Shotzi and Aaliyah did to earn an opportunity at the SmackDown Women's Championship? Absolutely nothing. Shotzi hasn't even been on TV. And Aaliyah, she's in catering. So, like I said, do these two earn an opportunity to get a shot at the SmackDown Women's Championship? No. They have done nothing. So then, as SmackDown came back from the commercial, Kayla Braxton was in the ring, and she ended up introducing Madcap Moss. So Moss ended up coming out, celebrating with his Andre the Giant Battle Royal trophy at ringside. Kayla Braxton ended up bringing up how Moss had what some called the biggest match of his career at WrestleMania Backlash, when he beat Corbin, which that match was very boring. So Moss ended up saying that this is by far the biggest win of his career, because we saw footage of Moss win the match over Corbin at WrestleMania Backlash. Moss ended up saying that Corbin is powerful, physically imposing, and can really wear you down with his terrible personality. He ended up saying that he probably would have tapped out from boredom if Corbin told him one more story about the cost of his watch. Moss ended up saying that it was tough, but he looked past Corbin's horrible tattoos, shielded his eyes from Corbin's bald head, and he defeated the big bad wolf. Kayla Braxton then ended up asking Moss what's next for him. Moss ended up saying that his career is just beginning, and he wants to do it all. Form a mixed tag team with Women's Tag Team Champion called Madcap Boss, meaning he wants to form a mixed tag team with Sasha Banks, and that he wants to climb the ladder and win the Money in the Bank contract and replace the title belts with title suspenders. Corbin ended up attacking Moss from behind with a chair, and Moss ended up going down. Corbin delivered more chair shots to Moss while he was down. So Corbin bought the Andre the Giant trophy in the ring. He ended up stopping Moss from getting up with some more chair shots. Corbin then ended up wrapping a chair around Moss's neck, and he then smashed it with the base of the trophy. Moss ended up rolling around in pain as officials ended up coming into the ring to check on Moss. So Corbin got out of the ring, laughed from the ramp. Adam Pearce then ended up waiting for a stretcher to come out, and medics ended up bringing a stretcher out. They ended up loading Moss into a neck brace, and he was put on the stretcher, and that was that. So it looks like this feud between Moss and Corbin is continuing. Great. Fucking great. Are we going to get a match with them inside Hell in a Cell? Awful. Who even cares still about Moss and Corbin? Who cares about this feud? I want this feud to end already. So then we have Shayna Baszler and Natalya versus Sasha Banks and Naomi. Women's tag team titles on the line. Very boring match. Same old shit. So we have Shayna Baszler and Natalya. They end up coming out first. And then Sasha and Naomi end up coming out. So the match started. Naomi and Shayna Baszler end up going at it. Baszler end up taking Naomi down by her arm. Naomi end up countering some moves. And then Sasha end up coming in. Naomi and Sasha end up double teaming on Shayna Baszler. Sasha end up taking the match over with Natalya. Natalya end up slamming Sasha face first to the turnbuckles. Started stomping away at her. Natalya then ended up sending Sasha into the corner. Sasha took her down with a head scissors. Sasha got some more offense on Natalya. She ended up going for the cover, to which Natalya kicked out at 2. So Sasha and Natalya, they were trading counters and pin attempts. Sasha ended up applying the bank statement on Natalya. Baszler ended up helping Natalya grab the bottom rope to break up the bank statement. Natalya ended up dropping Sasha with the slingshot atomic drop. She ended up stepping on the back of Sasha's neck, and she kept control of the match with more offense on Sasha. Baszler ended up taking in as she started stomping on Sasha to take control of the match. And as SmackDown came back from the commercial, Natalya ended up stopping Sasha from tagging in Naomi. She ended up dropping her on her head. Natalya then ended up dropping Naomi off the apron with a cheap shot. So Baszler ended up tagging in, and she ended up holding Sasha for a double team heart attack, to which Baszler ended up going for the cover. Naomi ended up rushing in to break up the pin. So at the end of the match, we had Sasha deliver a lung blow to Shayna Baszler. Naomi ended up countering a sharpshooter and rolled Natalya up for the pin. And there you go. Sasha and Naomi ended up winning the match, retaining the women's tag team titles. Obviously, Sasha and Naomi were going to win and retain. Match was boring. Same old shit. And then we saw Drew Gulak. Drew Gulak was backstage with Ricochet. Ricochet ended up appearing. Ricochet, of course, is the Intercontinental Champion. Drew Gulak ended up saying that his last few weeks have been rough. Gulak ended up asking Ricochet if he has any advice. Ricochet ended up saying that he knows it has been tough, and he knows Gulak knows he can relate. Ricochet ended up saying that if he would have given up when it got tough, he wouldn't have the Intercontinental Championship, and he could have called it quits. But he took control of the situation and his destiny. Ricochet went on to say that the only person who can help Gulak is himself. Gulak ended up saying that Ricochet is right, and this version of himself won't let Gunther chop him down to size. He ended up saying that the next time he sees Gunther, he will put him in his place. Drew Gulak ended up thanking Ricochet for the talk, and Gulak then ran to Gunther and Ludwig Kaiser role. Kaiser ended up asking Gulak to repeat what he said, what he might do to Gunther. So Gunther ended up attacking Gulak against the door, and Gunther ended up ripping off Gulak's shirt, and Gunther delivered a huge chop to Gulak, and then Gunther and Kaiser ended up walking off. Gulak was wincing in pain from the chop that Gunther ended up delivering to him. So that was that. So it looks like Drew Gulak wants a rematch with Gunther. That's the looks of it. And then we had Kofi Kingston versus Butch, aka Pete Dunne. And we're still going on with this feud with the New Day and Sheamus, Ridge Holland, and Butch. This has been almost 3 months that this has been happening. It's the same shit. So we had Kofi and Xavier end up coming out. And then as SmackDown came back from the commercial, we had Ridge Holland, Sheamus, and Butch end up coming out. Butch, Pete Dunne, end up returning last week. He was hiding under the ring, and he helped Sheamus and Ridge Holland win the tables match. So the bell ended up ringing. Kofi ended up charging with a big drop kick to Butch into the corner. And Butch ended up dropping Kofi out of the corner as Sheamus and Ridge Holland were cheering him on. Butch ended up mounting Kofi with some right hands. He ended up standing tall to boos from the crowd. Butch then sat down on Kofi, started bending Kofi's fingers and Kofi's wrist. So he ended up stomping on Kofi, ended up kicking him around a bit. Kofi fought back with some right hands, and Butch, or Pete Dunne, ended up delivering a forearm to Kofi. Butch charged, but Kofi ended up launching him over the top rope out to the floor. Kofi then ended up going for a baseball slide, and he missed as Butch ended up running back to the ring. Sheamus and Ridge Holland ended up staring Kofi down as Butch ended up trying to grab Kofi from the ring. Kofi ended up delivering a kick to Butch and a double axe handle from the corner. Kofi then ended up coming back to the ring and kept control of the match. He ended up sending Butch out to the floor on the opposite side of the ring. So Butch ended up staying out of the ring to take a breather. Xavier Woods was playing Francesca, his trombone. Kofi ended up teasing a dive to the floor, but he bounced off the ropes instead, and Kofi ended up kicking Butch from the apron while Butch was still on the floor. Kofi ended up getting on Xavier Woods' shoulders to celebrate. Woods was playing, Francesca, and SmackDown went to commercial. So as SmackDown came back from the commercial, Butch and Kofi were still going at it in the ring. Butch ended up blocking some strikes and ended up charging at Kofi, but Kofi started unloading on Butch, taking him down with the right hand. So Kofi ended up nailing the SOS in the middle of the ring to Butch. He ended up going for the cover, to which Butch ended up kicking out two. Butch then ended up grabbing Kofi by his earlobe, ended up slapping Kofi in the face. Butch then ended up running into a kick by Kofi in the corner. Kofi ended up leaping at Butch, and Butch ended up nailing the right hand for a close 2 count. So at the end of the match, we had Kofi end up knocking Sheamus off of the apron, and he turned around to a bitter end by Butch. So Butch ended up getting the win. Post-match, Ridge, Holland, and Sheamus wanted to celebrate with Butch, but Butch ended up storming off, going through the crowd. Sheamus and Ridge Holland ended up looking off from the stage as Butch ended up coming back from being in the crowd. Butch ended up raising Sheamus and Ridge Holland's arms in the air, and that was that. But I am over this feud. This feud needs to end. How many times have we seen Kofi and Xavier Woods versus Sheamus, Ridge Holland, and also Butch? How many times do we have to see these guys all go at it? It's the same shit. Like I said, I am over this feud. This feud needs to end already. So then we saw Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn was outside of the Bloodline's locker room with Paul Heyman. Sami ended up saying that he doesn't want to bother Roman, but he needs a favor from Paul Heyman, and he wants to make sure everything is okay. Sami wanted to say that he may have overstepped his boundaries earlier in accepting the match, but he wants to make sure Reigns sees his intentions. He kept saying that RK Bro came over from Raw and disrespected the Bloodline, but no one stood up for them but him. Sami ended up saying that he wants to make sure his relationship with Roman is synergetic. Sami ended up pleading some more. He ended up saying that he needs to get his respect back and just wants to make sure Reigns isn't upset with him. Paul Heyman then ended up putting his arm around Sami. He ended up saying that his tribal chief appreciates Sami. Paul Heyman ended up going into the locker room, leaving Sami outside, and that was basically that. And then the Bloodline ended up coming out. Roman Reigns, the Usos, and Paul Heyman. So they came out. Reigns ended up giving a shout out to Pennsylvania. He ended up calling on them to acknowledge him. He ended up saying that we've been doing this for a minute, and everyone knows the deal. Reigns ended up saying that we smashed them on Sunday, and then we come out on the next Friday and reveal who's next. Reigns ended up recalling smashing Cena and Lesnar. He ended up saying this Friday is a little different because last Sunday they smashed McIntyre and RK Bro, and that there's no one next because they smashed them all, and everyone is afraid of him, and no one wants to mess with him. He ended up saying that he is untouchable, to which Paul Heyman ended up agreeing. Reigns ended up saying that this is where things get interesting, because the Usos, his cousins, his blood, might have someone next, because there is a challenge on the table for them. And the question is, what are they going to do about it? So then, out came Owen and Riddle, RK Bro. Owen got on the mic. He ended up seeing Reigns smiling, and he ended up saying that Reigns didn't smash Cena, because Cena is 10 times the superstar Reigns will ever be. So Owen was like, believe that. Riddle got on the mic. He ended up talking about watching all matches before he goes to bed. He ended up saying that last night he rewatched the loss from WrestleMania Backlash and got to thinking about how they need to make the title unification happen. So Riddle ended up asking fans what they think about the unification match. So they ended up cheering that on. Owen then went on to insult the Usos, saying that they share one brain. And then he speaks slowly to tell them that RK Bro wants a tag team title match so that they can take both sets of titles to unify them to become the undisputed WWE Tag Team Champions. So Owen ended up asking the Usos if they understand the words coming out of his mouth. Owen ended up mentioning how he just noticed that he's a lot taller than them. So the Usos end up accepting, just not tonight. They end up saying that next week the match is on, and then the Usos will be the new undisputed WWE Tag Team Champions. So the Usos end up going on about how each of them will then have 2 titles. Reigns ended up raising both of his titles in the air, the WWE Championship and the Universal Championship, and Riddle ended up leaping out of nowhere. He ended up smashing Reigns in the face with a knee strike while he raised the titles in front of his face. Riddle and Orton ended up retreating to the ramp, so the Bloodline was seething in the ring. And Michael Cole and Pat McAfee on commentary confirmed that the unification match for the tag team titles will take place next Friday on Smackdown. And so that was how Smackdown went off the air. But I sense 2 options here. The first option, we get the match next week, and the match ends in a fuck finish, which I see WWE possibly doing. Second option, we get the rematch, RK Bro vs. the Usos, in the unification match to unify the tag team titles at Hell in a Cell. But the match will take place inside Hell in a Cell. So we'll possibly get RK Bro and the Usos inside Hell in a Cell in the unification match to unify the tag team titles. Those are my two options. We get a fuck finish next week, only to get a rematch at Hell in a Cell, so we can have RK Bro and the Usos inside Hell in a Cell in the unification match, and then unify the tag team titles. So that's my prediction. That's what I see happening. Who knows? Maybe wrong on it. But SmackDown tonight, awful show. Absolutely terrible. Moving on to Rampage, which Rampage was a good show tonight. We had the Death Triangle, Pac, and Rey Fenix and Penta. They end up taking on the Butcher, the Blade, and Marc Quen. We had Shawn Spears versus Bear Boulder of Bear Country. We had the Owen Hart Foundation tournament quarterfinal match, Ruby Soho versus Riho. And in the main event, the TNT Championship was on the line. Scorpio Sky defended the TNT Championship against Frankie Kazarian. Both guys, two former members of SCU, along with Christopher Daniels. But that was Rampage tonight. It was a good show. So Rampage opened up with the Death Triangle. Pac, Penta Oscuro, and Rey Fenix versus the Butcher, the Blade, and Marc Quen. This was a very entertaining match here. Penta and the Blade start off the match. Penta ended up hitting a super kick to the Blade. Penta tagged in Pac, and Pac ended up delivering a kick to the Blade's gut. He was holding the Blade's legs up for Penta to hit a drop kick from the top rope to the Blade's backside. Pac ended up continuing to pound around on the Blade. He ended up getting pulled out to the floor by the Butcher. The Butcher then ended up hitting a backdrop suplex on the ring apron to Pac. The Butcher ended up rolling Pac back into the ring. Blade ended up taking the Butcher. And we had Pac end up delivering a low drop kick. He took down the Butcher, and Pac followed up with a drop kick from the top rope. The Butcher ended up retreating out to the floor. Pac ended up waiting for the Butcher to come back into the ring. So the Butcher ended up getting back to the ring. He tagged in Marc Quen. Marc Quen ended up charging into a hip toss, and Pac tagged in Phoenix. Marc Quen ended up missing a standing moonsault, but he was able to take down Phoenix with a Hurricanrana and some kicks. Marc Quen, delivered a nice Hurricanrana to Phoenix. Marc Quen then ended up setting up Phoenix in a powerbomb position, but Phoenix lifted Marc Quen up for a flapjack. Phoenix then ended up hitting a springboard into an arm drag on Marc Quen. Phoenix tried to go for a reversal in the ropes, but the Butcher ended up running interference, and Marc Quen took control and delivered a drop kick, which sent Phoenix out to the floor. As Rampage came back from the commercial, the Blade had Phoenix in a front headlock. Phoenix tried to power up into his corner, but the Butcher and Marc Quen end up knocking both Penta and Pac off the apron. The Butcher ended up hitting a sister leg drop on Phoenix, to which Marc Quen ended up hitting the 450 splash on Phoenix. Marc Quen then ended up going to the top rope. He hit a dive onto Pac and Penta on the floor, which looked nice. So the Blade and the Butcher end up hitting a double team on Phoenix for a near fall. So we had the Blade end up chopping Phoenix. He ended up going for a suplex. Phoenix ended up escaping and nailed a Hurricanrana. Phoenix ended up crawling to his corner, and the Blade ended up grabbing Phoenix's leg. Phoenix ended up hitting a kick to the Blade. He crawled to his corner, tagged in Penta. Penta ended up just running wild on Quen and the Butcher. He tagged in Pac. Pac started kicking away on Quen. He ended up doing a German suplex to Quen. He ended up going for the cover, to which Quen ended up kicking out too. So the Butcher and the Blade end up grabbing Pac's legs from the floor. Phoenix and Penta end up taking both the Butcher and the Blade out with a nice pair of suicide dives. So Pac ended up taking down Quen. Phoenix and Penta end up hitting the Fear Factor on Quen. And then Pac followed up with the Black Arrow. So there you go. The Death Triangle end up winning the match. Post-match, the lights end up going out in the arena. And the lights came back on. And the House of Black was in the ring. Brody King, Malachi Black, and Buddy Matthews. They had a stare down with the Death Triangle. The lights ended up going out again. And when the lights came back on, the House of Black was gone. So House of Black is playing mind games with the Death Triangle there. But it was awesome. Overall, it was a good match between the Death Triangle, Butcher and the Blade, and Quen. Very entertaining. The wrestling here was good from these guys. And then we had Shawn Spears versus Bear Boulder. Bear Boulder of Bear Country. This was Boulder's first singles match in AEW. And the match was okay, in my opinion. Shawn Spears started off the match. He did his 10 taunt to Bear Boulder. Boulder then ended up grabbing Shawn Spears by the throat. He ended up pressing him over his head. Spears ended up escaping out of that. Boulder ended up catching his crossbody, slammed him down. Boulder ended up missing a charge in the corner as Shawn Spears ended up mounting Boulder in the corner, started landing some punches at him. Boulder ended up grabbing Shawn Spears by the throat with both hands and brought him out to the center of the ring. Boulder tried to mount Spears in the corner. Spears ended up raking Boulder's eyes, and he ended up bringing Boulder out of the corner on the shoulders. And Shawn Spears, at that point, hit the C4 on Bear Boulder. He ended up going for the cover, and there you go. Shawn Spears ended up winning the match. Post-match, Shawn Spears ended up battering Boulder with a chair shot. Then Shawn Spears ended up grabbing the camera, and he yelled into the camera. He said, "Warlow, the Giant Killer, is coming." So we're going to be getting Shawn Spears versus Warlow this Wednesday on Dynamite. Should be a good match, even though we all know Warlow is going to win. So overall, it was an okay match between Shawn Spears and Bear Boulder, which obviously we knew Shawn Spears was going to win the match. And then we had Lexi Nair. Lexi Nair was backstage with Tony Nese and Mark Sterling. Mark Sterling was shown in a neck brace, and he had a crutch because Warlow ended up powerbombing Sterling through the table on Dynamite. So they're going to be having a match, and it's going to be on the buy-in at Double or Nothing. It's going to be Tony Nese and Mark Sterling taking on Danhausen and Hook. Hookhausen. So Mark Sterling ended up saying that the match against Hook and Danhausen can't happen because he's not a wrestler. He's a lawyer. And he doesn't even own a pair of tights. So Tony Nese ended up saying that the match is actually fine because he can take both Hook and Danhausen down by himself. So that was what they had to say. But like I said, we're going to be seeing that match at the buy-in at Double or Nothing. So I think Hook and Danhausen are going to win the match. And then we had Riho versus Ruby Soho in the Owen Hart Foundation Women's Tournament quarterfinal match. And this was a very good match here. Riho and Ruby Soho, they both end up shaking hands to start off the match. So we had Riho and Ruby Soho, they both end up locking up. Soho delivered an armbar, and Riho end up reversing it. Soho ended up kicking Riho in the gut, and she ended up missing a running knee. Riho ended up trying to go for a Northern Light suplex, but Soho ended up blocking that, to which Riho responded with a head scissor takedown and a double stomp to Soho. And Excalibur, I gotta mention this. Excalibur on commentary, he ended up mentioning that Hikaru Shida is not medically cleared to compete in the tournament. And AEW is not telling us how Shida got injured. So Hikaru Shida is now being replaced by Chris Statlander. So Chris Statlander is in the Owen Hart Foundation tournament, replacing Hikaru Shida. Because, like I said, they're not telling us how Hikaru Shida got injured. So Ruby Soho ended up regaining control of the match. She ended up going up to the top rope. Riho avoided a double stomp, and she started firing up with some forearms to Soho. Soho then delivered a headbutt to Riho. Riho ended up locking in a half Boston Crab. Soho reached to the ropes, and Riho ended up breaking up the half Boston Crab. So as Rampage came back from the commercial, Riho ended up hitting a running knee into the corner on Soho. She ended up going for the cover, to which Soho ended up kicking out 2. Soho ended up managing to get Riho on the top rope. So Riho delivered a strike exchange to knock off Soho and hit a crossbody. She ended up going for the cover, to which Soho ended up kicking out at 2. So at the end of the match, Soho ended up hitting a backdrop driver for a 2 count, and she ended up going for the Blade Runner, and she hit it on Riho, and she went for the cover, and there you go. Ruby Soho ended up winning the match. So Ruby Soho is moving on in the tournament. Post-match, Riho and Ruby Soho end up raising each other's hands, in respect. So overall, very good match. Very physical match here with Ruby Soho and Riho. Really glad that Soho is moving on in the tournament. In my opinion, she is my pick to win the tournament. But overall, very good match. And then we went backstage with the Gun Club and the Acclaimed. And Billy Gunn was trying to get his sons and the Acclaimed on the same page. Billy Gunn ended up asking them, I think we need some hand gestures. To which Austin then raised his hand. He was like, oh, father. And he kept saying to Billy that him and Colton could put their hands on their crotch, like DX. And Billy was like, oh, stop it. So the Acclaimed ended up telling Billy, oh, how about this as their hand gesture? To which Bowens and Caster were doing this, and Bowens started going, to which then Caster was making a sound as they were doing this. It was funny though. Bowens going, and then Caster going, it was hilarious. And then Billy Gunn was like to them, oh, how about we have a catchphrase? To which Austin Gunn raised his hand again. He's like, oh, daddy. To which Billy was like, oh, go ahead. And then Austin was like, how about him and Colton say, we got 3 words for you? To which Billy ended up saying, stop it. Of course, they were throwing shades at, WWE with Billy Gunn, of course, being a part of DX. So Max Caster was like to Billy Gunn, how about this as a catchphrase? yo, now listen. To which Billy Gunn ended up liking that. So Billy Gunn ended up telling them that he got them a match. Not on Dynamite, not on Rampage, not at Double or Nothing. Billy got them a match on Elevation this Monday. And then Caster ended up spitting out his water at Billy Gunn. And then they're celebrating. I'm like, on Elevation? Who watches Elevation? So, but that was the segment with them. But it was funny. It was stupid at the same time. But overall, it didn't come off as cringe, in my opinion. So then we went back to the ring. Tony Schiavone was in the ring. Tony Schiavone ended up introducing Jade Cargill and the Baddies, Red Velvet and Kiera Hogan. So they came out. Mark Sterling was with them. Jade Cargill, still undefeated, has an impressive streak. Cargill ended up saying that, first and foremost, Tony, cut the shit. And Jade Cargill was all dressed in green, which looked good on her. Tony Schiavone ended up informing Cargill and the Baddies that Hikaru Shida will not be able to face Red Velvet in the Owen Hart Foundation tournament. Cargill then ended up saying, oh, that actually sounds like good news. She ended up asking Mark Sterling what happened to him. And as Mark Sterling was going to explain to her, and she ended up cutting him off as Sterling was going to answer her. So Cargill was like, oh, no one cares. So Sterling ended up saying that Red Velvet should move on in the tournament because Hikaru Shida can compete. So Tony Schiavone ended up informing Red Velvet that her opponent will be one of your longtime friends. So Kris Statlander came out. So Kris Statlander ended up making her way out. And that match is going to take place next week on Rampage. So it's going to be Kris Statlander versus Red Velvet in the quarterfinals in the Owen Hart Foundation tournament. Should be a good match. But that was basically the segment. And then as Rampage came back from the commercial, Mark Henry ended up chatting with Scorpio Sky and Frankie Kazarian. Ethan Page ended up saying that he doesn't know why Frankie Kazarian gets a shot at the TNT Championship. Scorpio Sky ended up saying that it's because he gave Frankie Kazarian his word. And Kazarian wanted a one-on-one match. Scorpio Sky ended up telling Ethan Page and Dan Lambert to take the rest of the night off because he just wants Frankie Kazarian one-on-one. And pretty much that was basically that. Then it was the main event. Frankie Kazarian versus Scorpio Sky, TNT Championship on the line. Very good match here, very entertaining, very physical match between Kazarian and Scorpio Sky. Two guys, former members of SCU, along with Christopher Daniels. And they were the first AEW World Tag Team Champions, which they end up losing the titles to Hangman Page and Kenny Omega. So we saw Sammy Guevara and Tay Conti. They were sitting at ringside for the match. So Scorpio Sky and Frankie Kazarian end up shaking hands. The crowd chanted SCU at them. Match started off with Scorpio Sky and Frankie Kazarian locking up. And it led to a takedown by Frankie Kazarian. Scorpio Sky ended up working back to his feet, ended up grabbing Frankie Kazarian in an armbar. Kazarian ended up coming off the ropes with a shoulder block. Frankie Kazarian ended up taking advantage of the match with a short arm scissor, which ended up grounding Scorpio Sky. Scorpio Sky ended up rolling out of that for a pin attempt that broke the hold. Scorpio Sky, he tried to go for the TKO, but Frankie Kazarian ended up trying to go for the crossface chicken wing, and that didn't work, and both guys collided in the middle of the ring. Frankie Kazarian ended up going for a suplex. Scorpio Sky ended up trying to block that. So Kazarian ended up finally getting a fisherman suplex on Scorpio Sky, ended up going for the cover, to which Sky kicked out too. Kazarian ended up charging at Sky, but Sky ended up avoiding him, and Kazarian ended up spilling out to the floor. Scorpio Sky ended up following him with a dive, and as Rampage came back from the commercial, Scorpio Sky ended up whipping Kazarian into the corner, and he ended up charging into a back elbow. So Kazarian ended up hitting a leg drop through the ropes onto Scorpio Sky, and he came back in with a roll-up, and Scorpio Sky ended up kicking out at 2, to which Kazarian followed up with a lariat to Sky. Kazarian ended up going for a springboard, and Sky ended up catching him on his shoulders. Kazarian ended up reversing that into a pin attempt, to which Scorpio Sky ended up escaping out of that. So Kazarian then ended up hitting a springboard leg drop, and he ended up going for the cover, to which Sky kicked out at 2. So at the end of the match, we had Scorpio Sky was arguing with Ethan Page and Dan Lambert, because Dan Lambert ended up running down to the ring. He started distracting the referee, and Ethan Page ended up coming in. He knocked out Kazarian with the TNT Championship, to which Scorpio Sky ended up falling on top of Kazarian with the pin attempt, but Kazarian ended up kicking out. Scorpio Sky then ended up hitting the TKO on Kazarian, and he ended up getting the pin. So there you go. Scorpio Sky ended up winning the match, retaining the TNT Championship. But post-match, Scorpio Sky was arguing with Ethan Page and Dan Lambert about them interfering in the match. Scorpio Sky was acting like he didn't realize that they got involved. So Ethan Page got on the mic, and he ended up saying that he did interfere. He ended up asking Scorpio Sky whose side he's on. So Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page, they got face to face, and we had Scorpio Sky end up hitting Frankie Kazarian in the face with the TNT Championship. Scorpio Sky ended up saying that he loves it when a plan comes together. Sammy Guevara and Tay Conti end up coming into the ring. They end up running off Scorpio Sky, Ethan Page, and Dan Lambert. And that was how Rampage ended. But Scorpio Sky betraying Frank Kazarian, throwing away 20 years of friendship. And it looked like they were going to have Scorpio Sky end up facing off with Ethan Page. It looked like they were going to turn Scorpio Sky babyface. Maybe he was going to punch out Ethan Page. But no, they end up swerving us, and Scorpio Sky end up hitting the TNT Championship to Frank Kazarian's head. And, that was that. But it seemed like, they were going to turn Scorpio Sky babyface, and he was going to start feuding with Ethan Page, only to have all of us be swerved. Which, that was good there. But overall, this was a very good main event, very good match between Scorpio Sky and Frankie Kazarian, two guys who were in SCU. We all loved SCU, both Scorpio Sky and Frankie Kazarian. They made a good tag team, in SCU. They were highly entertained together. And seeing both of them go one-on-one in this match was awesome. Very physical match that they had here. But overall, Rampage, good show tonight. But anyways, that's it for my review of SmackDown and AEW Rampage. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. Definitely give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. And next week, Rampage is going to be on at 7 o'clock. I know I said in my Dynamite review that it was going to be at 7 tonight, but it was actually 5:30. But next week, Rampage is going to be on at 7 on TNT. You know, they're going to be on at 7 because of the NHL playoffs. So, but we're going to have Rampage next week at 7, followed by SmackDown. So, but anyways, thank you all for watching. And until next video, I'll see you all later. And also, by the way, make sure to check out my previous video if you guys haven't seen it earlier today. Did an unboxing of the Stone Cold Steve Austin Smoky Skull Belt replica championship, which is the first ever replica title that I own in my collection. Really am glad to have that title. So check out my unboxing of that if you guys haven't seen it. But anyways, until next video, I'll see you all later.